Welcome to Feminine Power Time, where wisdom, leadership, and well-being meet. And welcome to episode 6 of 9 in this special season 8.5, the season of light. I'm Jennifer Alexander, co-curator and guest host for this season, which is running in June, July, and August. But whenever you're listening, trust that you're receiving this in the perfect season for you. If you're new here to Feminine Power Time, welcome. We're so glad that you found us. And if you're a longtime listener, thank you for coming back week after week to be in this conversation with us. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all and with Christine during this season of light, as we're in this real-time experiment of the feminine practices of co-creation and grafting, holding space here on the podcast for us to gather during this season to stay light together. And just a quick reminder, what is staying light? Well, it means to stay centered, calm, and clear, to be radiant, resilient, and rooted, even in the midst of the swirl of the outside world. It's not about spiritual bypassing. Instead, it's a way of living and utilizing our practices in order to come back to our light, even when we get wobbly. And trust me, we all get wobbly. We're humans and we're having a human experience. It's not about being perfect and maintaining some high level of vibrational consciousness 24/7. It's about being human, having emotions, having thoughts, and seeing them so that we can transform them and elevate from wherever we are, so that we can really show up differently as leaders in our own lives, in how we use our voices, our choices, and our presence in responding to life as it unfolds. Our topic for today is how can we use feminine wisdom, the perspectives and the practices to navigate through intense times? Because the intensity sure doesn't seem to be abating, does it? And we can't stop the swirl, but we can choose how to be present and respond to it. So, the invitation is to put your wise being glasses on and open up to seeing things differently. Here's Christine.
Welcome to Feminine Power Time. This is Christine O'Reilly, your host. Today is going to be one of our special episodes that I like to title Feminine Wisdom for Intense and Changing Times. I've been doing these feminine wisdom for intense and changing times for a couple of years now. I always do one at the start of the year, and then I kind of say, okay, whenever we need another one of these, universe, let me know, and I will drop in with one. And today, as I was sitting with what to focus our conversation around, I was like, we need one. We need to just take a breath and take a pause and kind of prepare ourselves for the journey to come. So I'm taping this live here right before August 1st, and I'll say a little bit more about this portal that happens every year between July 25th and August 12th. But whenever you're listening to this, it will be relevant. Here's how I work these feminine wisdoms for intense and changing times. Is many of you know that have been around for a while, and those of you that are new here, welcome, that I run a series of what I call feminine leadership councils that also includes the Feminine Wisdom Way School. And these councils are groups of women that choose to travel together for a year, or in some case, multiple years. And one of the practices that we do together is called counseling or wisdom counseling. And so we'll actually pause at different times throughout the year and say, okay, what is everybody noticing in the field? With a capital F. So a field with a capital F means like looking out at the collective field, what's going on. And think about the field as like the culture, society, all the things that we're actually seeing from whatever place that we stand, right? So everyone that's listening here right now, you all have different jobs. You all have different places you live. You all have different fields that you work in. You all have different setups in your family. We have different spiritual backgrounds. And so we all see different slices of things from our own eyes. And the power of wisdom counseling is, if you think of it like a circle and we put this thing in the center of like, what are we going to counsel around? We all then speak into that common space. So in today's session, this is about, okay, what is the wisdom that we need to navigate these intense changing times? And so in the actual feminine leadership councils, people speak what they see in the field. with a capital F. And then we do the same thing with the small f, with our small field. So think of the small field, like what's going on inside of you? What are you noticing in your own emotional life? What are you noticing in how you're riding the waves and riding them well, or maybe not so well? You keep falling off your surfboard. What are you noticing on that inside and that inner realm? And then always what comes out of these councils is some really great, what I like to call wisdom bites. I always say that wisdom doesn't speak in 200-page PowerPoint decks, and it doesn't take 200 pages to talk about one thing. It likes to talk in sentences or words or phrases, or sometimes in like things like koans and riddles, or rhymes. Like you get these, or maybe sometimes it's just a word, and you're like, oh, I don't even know what that word means, but it went zingy, zingy, zing, zing, and I really need to know more about it. This is how we ended up talking about radiance, because about 2 years ago, I heard that word, focus on your radiance. And I was like, radiance? Like, of course I know what that is, but like, what is that really? And then I took that and I'm like, I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to dive into that and not just learn about what the textbooks have to say, but like actually be in a direct relationship with the universe and with myself and with the world to find the wisdom. And that's how wisdom works, which is so, wonderful. Once it's gotten into a book, that's how we intellectualize it, which is super important. But that's knowledge. And I say this, I am an author, right? I write the books so that you have access to knowledge and language and other processes that allow you to activate that wisdom within you. So the teaching is that wisdom is knowledge embodied and experienced. So what I did today is I wrote down, okay, here's a lot of the different wisdom bites that we're working with in these councils, and I'm going to bring some of them to you. I just kind of wrote down a bunch of them here on my notes, so we'll see which ones come out. And if you're good with being a little spontaneous, as we kind of pause through each one, I'll slow down and I'll say, okay, write this one down, or, let this one sink in, and just kind of treat this session today as a way to, what I call reset your frequency, and to reset your maybe expectations, to take an exhale, to step out of the swirl or release the goop in whatever way it might be impacting you right now. And to use this, I don't know, I guess we're doing a podcast, but to me, the podcast is the format. To use this session, this conversation, this exploration to support you, so that as we navigate these intense and changing times, which will continue, you can stay on your surfboard. You might not be standing up every single day, ferocious, riding those waves. Some days you might be in Savasana, some days you might be paddleboarding. But if you do get wobbled off of it, you're able to get back on. So how does that sound to everybody? Okay, well, I have a candle lit. I'm drinking an iced latte because, as it turns out, summer is humid in the Southeast, and I'm in Asheville currently, so hello to you wherever you're at in the world. For now, let's go ahead and I want you to go ahead and take your hands, if you would do this with me, and put them over your eyes. Go ahead, put your hands over your eyes. And I want you to imagine that these hands over your eyes, like if you were to open your eyes right now with your hands over your eyes, and really do this, no one's looking at you. And you can't see anything, right? It's like if you were to try to walk around and navigate the world like this, you would be bumping into things, you would fall down, it would be disorienting, and you would probably get nauseous. This is what most people go around in the world like. All of us, to some level, we have we have these blinders on. We can only see the consciousness and the things that are going on through the consciousness that we have. And because you and I have been born into this crazy world and been imprinted and indoctrinated into systems that you're not even aware of, through family, through culture, through society, through education. I mean, just the education system alone of how we go to school. We sit in little desks, and every 45 minutes we move around to the next subject. That whole educational system and the way that it's all about learning with memorizing and pummeling information and just all of the whole thing. And so much of it is imprinting that isn't necessarily what's best for humans. And so those of you who have read Overwhelmed and Over It, you know this. Go ahead, keep your hands over your eyes. This is all about, now go ahead, and I want you just to go ahead and start moving your hands away from your eyes and look at your hands as you pull your hands away from your eyes. This is a practice I do every morning. It's a yogic science practice, yogic practice of connecting with yourself first thing in the morning. And as you pull your hands away, you're connecting with your body, but also look at the lines on your hands and just notice what do your hands look like? What are the lines like on your hands? What are your fingers like? My hands they've always looked like they're like the hands of a 110-year-old woman. They have all these lines on them, and I have all the skin on my knuckles, and they have all lines. They're just like they're old soul hands. And this piece, this being connected, like taking the blinders off, taking the illusion off, taking the smoke and mirrors off, like seeing through that is essential right now. Because part of what's happening and part of what's creating the chaos and the stirring up of anxiety and all these emotions that feel so heavy and hard is that there's all of this muck that's flying around that can get you confused and disoriented and not knowing what's real and not feeling sure and exacerbating all kinds of things. So what we do here at Feminine Power Time, and many of you have these practices, is that we practice our daily practice, our morning practice, our meditation practice, our intuition practices, our co-creation practices, all these things, so that you can stay connected to what is real and discern for yourself that. And that starts with this connection. And as all you're looking at your hands as well, notice that these are the hands of creators. These are the creating hands, the making hands. In different esoteric traditions, they'll show these hands with the light in the center of the palm. And it's often referred to as the yad, which is like the hand that the divine comes through. Like the divine is this beautiful light energy, like the Force, right? In the Jedis. And it needs us. It needs our hands. It comes through us to create reality. So reality, almost everything that's not naturally here on the planet, that's part of the trees and the animals and all of that, is created by humans. Right? And you and I are one of these. And this is one of the primary parts that we just need to really root into, love, as we go through this. If you are here right now and you are listening to my voice and you are part of this conversation, you are one of the people who are here to reimagine and redesign and recreate this world into a better, more beautiful, more compassionate, more peaceful, more harmonious reality that is 100% totally possible. The challenge is that we have been matrixed into a reality that's not that for some time. And it just depends on which wisdom tradition you look at that is the number. It could be 2,000 years, 5,000 years. In the yogic philosophy, we work in 26,000 year cycles. And so the descent started 11,500 years ago, and we just hit the bottom. If you think of a circle, like a cycle of time, 11,500 years, we just went through the bottom, like in the or just got out of the bottom in the 1960s, 1970s, what's called the Age of Aquarius. And in some traditions, they say we work in time epochs of 2,000 years. And so every 2,000 years, there's shifts in the astrology signs. And so we went from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And there's other things in indigenous wisdom traditions that talk about the times that we are in right now. And in the Mayan calendar, there's so many, okay? So the point being, why I'm sharing all this with you all, is that we are in a transition that isn't like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Oh my God, like what's happening? Like if you don't know any of these other things, if you're not conscious that these times have been predicted in many different ways, then it would be a shock to your system. And even for those of us that have known and have been expecting something to shift and have been waiting in some ways, the level of what we're experiencing, we could never have imagined. And it's like that, in any adventure you set off to. I always think of Bilbo Baggins, right? And he goes off in The Hobbit, and he's like excited. He knows there's going to be danger, but like they have no idea like what an orc is really like, right? And what's like to fight the giants, and like all of it was like crazy intense, right? And we're living in that a bit. Like even those of us that have been conscious to a change is coming and it's much needed. Because what's going on, and this is a perspective, you listen, and you take in what feels right and true for you. Again, you are here not to listen to me as I'm some, almighty knower. I am not the almighty knower. I am here to share perspective and language and practices so that you can find your own truth and open up to perhaps things that you don't know or you haven't been aware of, or maybe you were aware of and forgot. A lot of the women that are in my councils, many of them have been having a practice for 20, 25 years, a very deep practice to themselves and their inner wisdom and all of that. And one was saying today, I've not been tuning into my intuition and my inner knowing for weeks now, maybe months. Oh my God. Like I got to come back to my practice. So if we just take a moment and just say, okay, where are we right now? Open up what I like to call your wise woman eyes or your wise being eyes, those wisdom eyes, and look around at the bigger field. Now, your human eyes are going to see a lot of chaos. Your human eyes are going to see a lot of deconstruction. Your human eyes are going to see things falling apart. And that's part of the process. For those of you that have heard the Sacred Transformation series I did last year or attended the Sacred Transformation webinar I did 2 years ago, you'll remember, and for those of you that don't, I'll share it here, the triangle of transformation, sacred transformation. And if you think of the triangle, kind of visualize it, on the left-hand bottom side is heal and release. On the right-hand side of the triangle is stabilize in the now. And on the top is lead and co-create the new. So we are doing all of those three things at the same time in the bigger field, the F, and in our own field. So when you look at the bigger field and you see all of these things that are happening, whether whatever it is that's creating fear and unrest and chaos, it could be inflation, it could be rising housing prices, it could be the politics, it could be there's climate change, so many things. What we are seeing is that releasing and that deconstruction of what has been. And when something is going to die, when something cannot continue to live, it will fight like hell to be able to stay in control and to be able to stay alive. And that is what we're seeing right now. And it doesn't discount any of the really challenging things that are happening because of it. But this is how we are as humans. Just like take this perspective for a moment. I don't know why we're like this, but sometimes we don't actually change until the shit gets hard. It's like the shit gets hard and it takes us to our knees and it wakes us the F up. And all of a sudden we're like, I got to do something about this. And I need to change this. And not the kind of change where we're like, we go out and we do something that creates, I don't know, we go out and we drink too much or we have sex with somebody or, all the crazy things we do in our early 20s where then we feel like shit the next day about. And we're like, okay, I promise I'll never do that again. I'll never do that again. Or, any of those kinds, not that kind of stuff. Because then we know what we do. We just go and we eat the box of cookies again and we do the same bad habits. This is different. This is like the moment I came to this understanding when I was writing Overwhelm and over it and understanding like what made the difference between when we really make shift. And even in my own life, there's a moment we have, I call them our no more moments. And they're like these lines in the sand that say, no more, not again, not on my watch. So one way of looking at what's going on in the big field, the capital F, is it is calling every single one of us up to say, not on my watch, not on my watch, no more. If there was no Darth Vader, would Luke Skywalker have actually become Luke Skywalker, the Jedi? Maybe not. Now, maybe not. There had to be that opposing force that he responded to. And that's kind of like the times that we're in. Now, Darth Vader is Luke's father, right? So in the end, there's not a separation there. And this is like, this is where you got to open up your mind and be able to be with what is without blame and judgment, but with absolute discernment and non-condoning of shit that's just not okay. And I know I'm saying the S word a lot. I think I've all of a sudden my Chicago's coming out. This is what happens. This is the fire. This is the fire that then has to be met with grace. So as you look out there and you see that, it's like, okay, let me just take a step back. So we're going to just take a step back. What are the patterns that you're seeing? So this is the other part of like, what are the patterns that are connected? This is one of the 6 kinds of intuition. One of them is the overview pattern. And the overview pattern is when you can see the connections between things. And as you see the connections, it opens up wisdom that you couldn't see without seeing the connections. So it's like seeing the connection points helps you actually open up your awareness and your consciousness. Right. So like for me, when I was talking about education earlier, when I saw many years ago the connection between how the education system is set up and how the corporate system is set up, where people go into offices or they go into desks and they just keep doing the thing, do the thing, do the thing. Like I saw how the whole system was basically just, minted and created to educate people to fit into that, what I call the TikTok robots, in all of these different ways, from healthcare to education to corporate to government, all of it. And I was like, whoa. But what that helped me see is how entranced and entrained we were as humans. But then opened up consciousness to have compassion, to see, okay, where are the points that we can actually start to make shift at? So what I'm saying to you and inviting you into here is what Christine is saying, is that there's things going on in the field. And I want to look at what's going on in the field through the wise woman, the wise being I, saying, this is the time period of deconstruction, of releasing so we can heal the past, because you can't move forward without just healing. You just scab over it. And if you just scab over it, it's going to come back and bite you again, and you're going to create from the wound. People do this a lot in relationship. So they have a devastating breakup, and instead of diving in and going into the love cracks and into the wounds, they just do a little work maybe, or none at all, take some medicine and medication, and then they just scab over it until the next relationship rips that off. And I remember when I had my big wake-up catalyst at 30, and that was through the ending of this relationship, I was like, no more. I am not recreating this relationship again. I'm going to go into whatever is going on that's creating this, and I'm going to heal it so I can release it, so I can actually then create the new. But I had to go through those steps of, okay, I choose no more. I'm going to dive in, heal, release, and then I'm going to stabilize in the now so I can open up, I can learn, I can expand my consciousness. And this is probably why I moved to California at 33. I was like, I want to go explore. It was like spiritual candy land and so much possibility. And I learned from, I just found such great teachers, and I was stabilized. I had my, my good paying job, and I was exploring and traveling to Bali and doing these things, and it just expanded me. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm now ready to be part of creating and leading the new. And that's when I started writing my books and finding my voice and really coming into alignment with my true purpose and design and destiny on this planet. This is the normal process of transformation. So we're going through that collectively. So when you look at CNN, which I go on that page about once every 2 weeks, I'm like, let me just see what's deconstructing right now. Let me see what's playing out here right now. And then, okay, there's usually no anything that's about leading the new, that's or creating the new. Like there's hardly nothing about that. And I'll look for some evidence of stabilization. Like what are some things that are stabilizing? And then I pull back and I do this in my own life. Is like, what are the parts that I'm healing and releasing as I am also trying to stay stable in the now while I'm creating the new and the next. And so I offer this frame to you, just, considering this for a moment for yourself. In this realm of healing and releasing, what is it that you're working through or is wanting to catalyze through you right now? And if you know already, that's great. What's the support you need to actually really go deep and excavate that stuff? And the excavate doesn't mean, oh my God, I have to be in pain and suffering. You can actually heal through joy. I am healing some of my old sisterhood wound stuff. So I'm doing that not by like, I'm going to go and I'm going to connect to all the women where, with friendships that didn't work and all the pain. Like, ugh, it just makes me feel so heavy. I've already done that. I'm doing it through joy of actually being in collaboration with other women and choosing to consciously create. So in some ways, I'm actually healing while also leading into the new. Like those two things are actually working together because I've done a lot of that healing work myself on that heal and release. But so for an example, it's like I'm going to Chicago. I know I'm going to be there. I'm going for a reunion for my graduate school for Kellogg with a group of people I went to China with in 2002. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to go early. We'll do the retreat there. And then, hey, I would really love to do like a half-day equinox power pause for the women in Chicago. And so I just reached out to a friend. I reached out to two friends, actually. And I called one and she didn't respond. And I reached out to another and she did. And so that's the one I'm co-creating with. But because I'm not coming from that wounded place, the one who didn't call me, I'm not like, oh, why didn't she call me? Because I've done that work, but I was also aware of that in the process. So while I'm sharing this with you, is that there isn't a person I know who isn't right now experiencing healing and releasing transformation at a personal level, at a relational level, and even at an ancestral level. It's happening where we're healing wounds that are like, probably 7 generations back for some of us and maybe farther. And it's happening for everybody. But if you're not conscious of it, you're just not going to get the juice from it. So I'm giving you this frame. And even if you are conscious, like, okay, this, between now and let's say the end of the year, what is that part that you're healing and releasing yourself inside of you, right? Inside of you, and choosing to, the practice is when that same wound comes back up. Now here's the wisdom bite. Because it will if you choose it, right? So for me, part of it is home and, never really rooting any place. I never felt rooted in Chicago, even when I lived there. And I really did love living in California, but then I moved around a lot. And I'm like, where am I going to live? Where am I going to live, right? But I'm like, okay, this is not that. So the practice is when that same wound from whatever it is that is catalyzing through you, you say to yourself, this is not that. This is different this time. There's something that shifted for us as a collective in the 2021, kind of where we're at 2022 and beyond, that's allowing us to come at similar things from an elevated way. So if things are showing up in your life that are similar to things you've had experiences before, slow it down and say those words to yourself. This is not that. This is an opportunity for me to elevate. Every year in August, we activate the feminine superpower of Catalyze, and at the Feminine Wisdom Way, which is the wisdom school and conscious co-creative community that I run. And we activate it every year and ask this question, like what's catalyzing through me for a deeper healing and a releasing and a freeing? What am I shedding? What am I not bringing with me? So this is super powerful work to be doing right now, and it will help you feel lighter. It'll help you feel lighter. All right, taking a breath. It's so good to be with you all. I really, it is a little bit intense out there, right? But here's the part of the wisdom that I'm going to bring us into right now. So one of the themes that we're working with in the councils right now is for the rest of this year is sovereignty in the swirl. Sovereignty in the swirl. So I want you to think about that for a moment of what that means for you. Sovereignty within the swirl. So sovereignty, you are whole within yourself. You are insulated from the chaos, meaning not that you're not affected by it, not that you're not impacted by it, but it does not define you. It does not determine your destiny. It does not, it may have an impact on how fast something might happen, the form it's going to take, but you are not at choice. And one thing to know about what's going on in the world is it's making a lot of us very easily to feel like we're not at choice. We're being controlled. And in many ways, it's easy to look at that. It's like, okay, women and states can't have abortions, and they can't decide what they want to do with their own bodies. That literally is taking away choice. So it is happening at an absolutely material level, which is then triggering things within us. Same thing with like the housing market. If you look at the housing market, it's like, how am I even going to afford a house? The house just keep going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. That is part of the fear matrix. It's part of that, whatever that energy is that wants to keep us distracted, swirled up, acting from that. It's called primal fear. And it sits in every single animal on the planet, you and me. It's that part of survival. I have to survive, and if I'm not going to survive, and then I'll die. And that's what all of that mishigash, shifting, changing, all of that stuff that's going on. It's not that it's not real. It's just not the only reality. So this is two parts to this piece of sovereignty in the swirl. What that means is you want to cultivate and maintain your sovereignty within the swirl, that even though I might be affected by inflation, by choices that are being made, people have to literally leave the Ukraine and our refugees all over the world. They can't stay where they live. For those of us that are not in basic survival, like, am I going to eat? Am I going to have a house over my head? Am I physically safe? Which that is a reality, but most of us don't have that reality. We need to be as resilient as we can. That actually helps elevate those that are. And so just knowing, okay, what Christine is saying is that we're going to get triggered. Our primal fear is going to get triggered, and that's could make us feel contracted. It can make us feel swirly. It can make us feel like we have to make a choice. It can make us feel like we don't have a choice. And we can also, it can create the reality where we're making choices from the wound. Choices in our career, choices and what housings we buy, when we buy houses, how we invest our money. Talking to a former client who was a head of HR for a tech company, and she was saying how so many of her employees that are in their early 30s are coming to her freaking out because they said that they never knew the stock market could go down. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And so if you never knew the stock market could go down, you're now freaking out because you're thinking, oh my God, I'm losing all this money. And one level, people are losing money. But also in another way, the entire economic system in itself is part of what's keeping us trapped in this burnout matrix. And this greed and this must keep growing, this thing that they call the growth mindset, it's part of what keeps the matrix in place, where we have people who don't have places to live and who live in danger and don't have safety and all the things that none of us want to have happen. But part of it is because of the current economic system. And the same thing could be true just for a person who's middle class, what that actually is in certain areas of this country, which is crazy. So that growth mindset of like, we have to keep growing and there's more, and like 10% returns, and the housing market, if you look at it, it's a market. It's become like the stock market. And so you take housing, which is a basic primal need for people to have shelter, and you start turning it into an investment pool where companies are buying houses and people own 10 houses and turn them into Airbnbs, and neighborhoods start to not become neighborhoods anymore, and all of those things. And we become part of the very reality we don't want to be creating, and we don't even know it. And so this is not to blame anyone. Again, this goes back to where we started. We have our hands over our eyes, and we have like this primal fear that sits at the base of our spine. And we don't know what we don't know. We don't know. And so we respond and we react from this energy from the outside that really is the swirl. So what do? How do we keep that sovereignty in the swirl so that you and I don't contribute to the very thing that we don't want to create? Because we do need to be stabilized, right? So here's the thing. You and I, we need to be stabilized in the now so that we can heal and release and also create the new. It's hard to do that when you're in survival mode. So, a couple things. I'm going to take a shake out because that was heavy, and I didn't even know I was going to talk about that exactly like that. But I think why I did is because I'm just inviting us all to like open our eyes to what's going on inside of these systems. And this is where like people will call this time the great resignation. I'm like, no, this is the great revealing. And if you weren't aware to this, you wouldn't see it. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because there are people out there that will want to take this awakening and then distort it and start to create pockets and polarities and say crazy stuff that really isn't true. And then it can get you all swirled up into it, and we see it, and it creates more frenzy and more fear and more othering, when what we need to do is find that sovereignty in the swirl, but also find the connection within that. And so how do we do that? All right, a couple things. You ready? All right, so I am going to actually read you this passage from the Oracle, The Earth Warriors. It's by Elena Fairchild, who she's like the Oracle Queen. That woman she has so many oracles, but they're good. An oracle, basically, for those of you who don't know, is a card deck. Like a card deck you get that, it's like a self-care deck or a Earth Warrior deck or a Sacred Rebel deck. It's a way to tap into the intuitive field that gets us out of the mind into the realm of image and metaphor and wisdom. And so every 2 years, I usually get a new oracle deck to work with, and I chose to work with this one. And every new moon in the Feminine Wisdom Way, we choose a community card that will support us for this cycle. And this was the one we pulled last night. And this is the piece that is part of how we go through this, right? So how feminine wisdom for navigating these intense times underneath sovereignty in the swirl. It's called Hearing Truth. And you can even close your eyes to take this in. There is a deeper truth that shall bring peace to your heart, offering you guidance, comfort, and renewal. You, dear one, are guided to turn within for your answers. Do not allow another to interrupt, influence, or distort your personal, trusting relationship with the divine. Allow Spirit to be your highest counsel always, and you shall never be led astray. You shall know the words to speak and the consciousness to hold, to evoke healing and set things right. Listen, for deep within, truth is known. Listen, for deep within, for truth is known. So let yourself just slow down here, like take it down 2 gears. Let your body find your breath. And let all of that mental energy drain out of your head so it's open space to allow divine guidance to come in. And if the word divine doesn't work for you, it's like it's the light, it's the universe, it's force. Good kind of force. And just take another breath and allow your shoulders to relax. Shoulder blades, your diaphragm, your belly. And just let the energy flow all the way down through your pelvis, into your feet, down into the ground. And I want you to use your imaginal intelligence to see or feel that light of radiance I talked about in the Stay Light series. But if you didn't hear that, just imagine it's kind of like a lightsaber that runs through the center of your body. In yogic philosophy, it's called the Sushumna. And one of the reasons why it's essential, if you want to stay sovereign and sane during this time within the swirl, keep light, you have to have a morning practice that connects you to yourself, your physical body, mind, spirit, and heart. Clears out this channel. Clears out what's called your magnetic field, which is about 6 feet around you, back and forth, all over, 3-dimensional, like Glenda the Good Witch bubble. For those of you who have Overwhelmed and Over It, this whole second section, Liberate Your Life Force, if you haven't read it, read it. It goes into much more detail about this. If you don't and haven't received the Daily Flow Practice Kit that I created, that has a video about this, go to dailyflowpractice.com and download it. Connecting into this center point so you can feel your connection to yourself, and also it's like a place of stillness within. You can imagine it like a tiny, almost like a tiny, not like a ballpoint pen-sized light. In the yoga tradition, it's called the shunya, or the 0 point. There's a name for it in Qigong and TCM, and I always forget the name of it. It's the Wu Chi, I think it's the Wu Chi or the Wu Wei. It's the one before the two. It's before the yin and the yang. It's that place that that is the oneness. In the sacred feminine traditions, it's called empty presence. And it's a practice that you cultivate over time. So where are you in your morning practice? Do you have one? Is it consistently happening every day? Does it make sure that you connect body, heart, mind, and spirit, and you touch and feel into this center point? In some other mystical traditions, it's called the click. So you don't have to meditate for an hour. When we do yoga, we do the movement so that at the end we can sit and we can touch this part and we can feel what's called the click. It clicks on, your heart opens, you feel a presence. You can call it grace, you can call it divine, you can call it, with the trees, you can call it Mother Nature, I don't care, you can call it God, whatever it is. And within that, it fills your field with light, it fills you with light. And so just take a moment and see if you can feel that center within yourself. Feel your own energetic field. This is also this practice of just centering every morning this way will help keep you in your neutral mind. And when we get caught up in the swirl, we are in the distortion of our negative or our positive mind. And so these practices help you access the neutral mind. And they will help you do the smallest things to help you not get into the swirl. Like yesterday, I was working with one of my amazing leadership clients, and I helped her with an email that was a situation that was completely triggering, and it helped her come from the neutral mind, and it was so much better because it just ended it there. We didn't have to carry on in the swirl. And so this is the thing, the swirl, whether it's somebody else, like in relationship, or it's the outside world, or even if it's your own trigger, it's going to want to get you. We're living in a really amplified field right now. So expect that you're going to get triggered. Expect that you might step outside of your center of power. Expect that. Just don't react from it. And if you don't have a solid morning practice that you're connecting to these 4 points, that you're protecting your energy field, that you're building up your pranic and magnetic body so that the heebie-jeebies from the outside world aren't getting in there, a very technical term, read the Life Force section in chapter 2 on there in section 2 and over it and go get the Daily Flow practice kit. All right. One more. You ready? I just want to say, before we do this last one, I just want to say how grateful I am to each and every one of you for choosing to be awake, to learn, to open, to grow, to evolve. All of the invisible things that you have done to be who you are today, all the invisible things that no one may ever know that you've done that have elevated your frequency and your capacity to be an elevated frequency, whether it's at the grocery store or it's at your kid's school or it is, in a relationship with your mother or at work or in any way. I just want to acknowledge you for that. It's this thing that when we think about success in this culture and the way we look at it currently, it's all based on what's visible. How big is your house? How big is your bank account? What we can see by how expensive your purse is, blah, 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 blah. And not that, material things are important. I love beautiful things. They don't have to be extraordinarily expensive. They just need to be beautiful and be well made. But the invisible things, they're not valued. Even us, we don't even value them. It's like, am I really doing anything? Am I really doing anything? And just like, the other day, I was triggered. I was projecting my stuff onto Noah, my own fear, my primal fear, and not feeling like I was at choice around home was totally projecting all over Noah. And in the moment, I wasn't totally able to shift it, but the next morning, I got up and I said, I'm so sorry for projecting my stuff onto you. I'm like, I was totally triggered. He's like, yeah, I know. He's like, you are forgiven. And so that happens a lot in our house. Very rarely it's Noah who needs to be forgiven, but he's so forgiving. And I'm like, I know that as we're doing that, that's elevating the world as much as anything else I might do, right? Is that vulnerability to say I'm sorry and own my part brings more compassion into the world. So you're doing that. So let's just mark that. And so this is one of the practices that I love. I wanted to make sure to get this in for you. And then I'll share 2 more wisdom bites. It's called the EOE, Evidence of Elevation. EOEs and EOMs. Okay, so EOEs are evidence of elevation. And part of what we need in order to navigate through these times is evidence that things are elevating, evidence that elevation is happening. So that's like an example in just my relationship, how we are elevating by choosing to be in this very real, loving, compassionate relationship. That's an EOE. One of the women from the Feminine Leadership Councils emailed me and actually texted to the whole group this really beautiful story that was written about a river, I think it's the Potomac, I'm not sure, that had been polluted basically by a corporation. And it was deemed to be First Peoples, Indigenous people's land, but now it's all polluted. And that company is actually proactively making restitutions and doing the cleanup of that land. And I was like, EOE, EOE. And so it's a practice that we use in our councils. It's actually a section I'm going to be adding to the Feminine Wisdom Cafe and inviting people to put EOEs up so that, because we don't see them, in the news. And so we need to be able to see these EOEs in order to keep co-creating and leading the new. If we don't see that light, if we don't see that things are actually changing, we'll just be like, oh my God, why is this just, we'll be so heavy. So find evidences of EOE in your life. That's one of the practices. EOMs are connected also to the creating and leading the new, and that's evidence of momentum. So I wish that things happen sometimes faster than they do. I'm a card-carrying member in the Impatience Club. I keep ripping up my card and it keeps coming back in the mail. And so there's a difference between being stuck in the muck and being in an in-between time. A lot of people right now are in a time that kind of feels like being in limbo, or a better word is a Buddhist term called the bardo. It's in between things. The old has died, the new is still coming in, and we're kind of somewhere in between, which leaves a lot of uncertainty, which means that a lot of people get uncomfortable in there. So the bardo, that's, if you're feeling like you're in that place, you can just say, I'm in the bardo. And in the bardo, there's things you know, and there's a lot of things you don't know. And so one of the things that we have to know in ourselves, and as we go through these transitions, is that we're going to have these bardo times. And when you're in that bardo time, what you want to be doing is, number one, go ahead and embrace the uncertainty. Just be like, oh, I'm in the bardo. I'm in a transition, and I just don't know. Even in what's going on in the big field, right? There's tons of uncertainty in there, and people are gluing themselves to the television screens to find the certainty. Oh, we have to watch all these things. We have to watch all these things. And I'm just like, oh my God, stop watching all the things. When there's a decision and there's certainty, you will know. But you're tapping into the stuff like you're addicted to a TV show. And so it's like embracing the uncertainty. It's like, okay, is that on my watch? Is that part of what I need to be focused on? Is that important to my part on this planet? And if the answer is no, don't turn over that way. Turn back to yourself. Turn back to hearing that truth and tuning within yourself. Embrace the uncertainty. I don't know. I'm in the bardo. I'm in this in-between time. And just take the next step. What's the next step? Because what happens is that next step starts to create the momentum. And so the wisdom for this time is co-create from momentum and intention. And so a lot of times I see, especially people who are very trained in their intellect, they think they have to know, because that's how we're trained in this education system and this world. But that's not how the world works. So there are things you're always going to know, and there's things that and I mean know like in your body, in your own truth. Like, I know I'm going to be fine. I have always been given a beautiful place and space to live. So why would that be any different? It just may not come in the time frame that I want, or in the package I want, or where I want it. So I could spend every day on Zillow looking frenetically at where the next housing is, or I could co-create from momentum with intention. trust, I'm going to be in co-creation in this part of my life that is my catalyst right now. And so think about the thing that is catalyzing for you. I work with a lot of people who are in career transitions. I'm in part of my own professional elevation right now. So I don't know how it's all going to look, but I got to take the next step. And so the next step for me is say, okay, everybody, I'm setting my intention. These are the classes and the professional development things that I'll be collaborating on and creating for you this year. So that creates momentum. And then I start talking with people and I'm like, oh, hey, Dina, do you want to do Gather and Guide Your People with me again this year? And hey, Rebecca, do you want to do Self-Love Essentials with me? And hey, Noah, you want to do this relationship thing? And so it starts to create the momentum, and my whole body is moving right now. And you'll start to feel, this is called feeling it forward. You'll start to feel like where the energy is. And where it's not, right? So as I'm like working with one of my clients, she's like she's thinks she wants to leave the company that she's at. She's been talking to these other places, and some places haven't responded at all. Some places she's waiting for, and she just got an invitation and an offer for a place, which seems like it could be really in alignment. And then there's that part of her that's like, but I think maybe I should stay. And it's like, we always want to stay, or we always want to go back. And you can't go back, and you can't stay where it no longer fits for you. And sometimes you can stay, and you just have to shift your relationship to it. This is true in relationship, it's true in home, it's true in career, it's true in all the different areas of our lives. But just knowing that there has to be transformation, and you don't have to grip on, that the momentum itself can be what carries you. And then have intention, So for me, it's like living in a light-filled home that supports me to do the work I'm here to do, and also live a really wonderful, creative life that feels easeful for me. That's my intention. And so I'm moving that way in that area. So where is the momentum at in that area for you? And what's your intention? And stay with the intention of the feeling of it, and the image of it, and the imagination of it, not it's going to be a 4-bedroom this, or it's going to be at this kind of a school, or it's going to be that. Like, let the universe in, everybody. This is the last piece. Let the universe in. And how you do that is every day you gotta let it in. So pick a language, be it the divine, universe, God, spirit, soul. I don't care what it is. But otherwise, you're just walking around with your own human knowingness and not this bigger help. And my prayer is divine. Play me like a finely tuned instrument in your orchestra. Show me. And I say that 3 times every morning. And that's a very easy way to just start what's called the co-creative process. And then as you go forward from here, be aware of the now. Like, stabilize in the now, in your own field, and be aware of what's going on in the field out there in the now and what's needed. But also keep the long game in mind and put energy into both. These are the last 2 pieces. Be aware of the now and what's needed so you can stay stabilized in your own field, or even looking around at the outside field, but keep the long game in mind and put energy into both. And lastly, stay focused on your part, your design. And if you're not clear on your design and your part, then get clear this year. Create space to do that. All right, dear ones. So we're getting ready to complete right now. And just taking a moment, and here is my invitation to you. To every day, elevate one thing that's an EOE or an EOM, evidence of elevation or evidence of momentum. And then bring that practice into your family, to your team, to your work environment, to your clients, and use it. EOE, EOM, and you can say, I learned this thing from Christine O'Reilly in the Feminine Power Time podcast, or don't, but do. And it's a way that we, stay out of overwhelm and burnout and stay focused on what matters. So feel free, go out there and be an elevator. EOEs and EOMs. Much love.
Welcome back, wise beings. How is everybody feeling? I, for one, am feeling very grateful for this space. This space allows me to press pause on the outside world and really deepen into the feminine wisdom and the practices and the perspectives that were so beautifully shared with us by Christine today. And what I love especially about this episode is that it really gives us some practical hows to navigate these times through the practices and the perspectives that support us in shifting, in elevating, even in the midst of all the intensity and all of the swirl. And I wanted to give you just a little example of my experience with this wisdom. It's very, very present right now. You might even hear that my voice sounds different this week. Well, I'm in a period of intensity myself right now. And with that intensity, I ended up catching a cold. But what I can say about this experience is that I really see how the practices of feminine wisdom, and specifically my morning practice, helped me to avoid going all the way into burnout, falling all the way off of a cliff during this period of intensity. I did experience a dip. My body did, take on this little bug, but I was able to move through it. I was able to move through it more quickly, more swiftly, and with more grace and ease. And my morning practice, you all, is super simple, and it comes right from what Christine has been sharing with us. I simply, before I get out of bed every morning, I put one hand on my heart and one hand on my stomach, and I take 4 deep breaths. And I intentionally, with each breath, I think about a different realm of me. So I take a deep breath into my body, a deep breath into my mind, a deep breath into my heart, and a deep breath into my spirit. And then I check in on my life force, just as Christine has taught us. And I come up with a number. I hear a number, really, from 0 to 100. And it was that piece of the practice that really helped alert me to, you've been in this time of intensity and your life force is dipping a little bit. You need replenishment. And in the past, I probably would have just barreled through and sort of ignored the fact that I'm a human and that I have human needs like rest and rejuvenation. But this gave me just a little, kind of like the little light, the check engine light on your car. And so I was able to intentionally shift some small things in my life. While I couldn't necessarily just check out for an entire day, I am a mother of 2 young children. I also, besides my great work as a mother within my family, I have great work in the world as well through running a specialty coffee company and working here with feminine wisdom, as well as working in women's leadership. So I have a lot of a lot of pieces there to my life. It's a very rich and dynamic life that I'm grateful for. But coming back to the practice, this helped me say, okay, what are some intentional shifts that I can make in each day, whether it was really being mindful of turning off technology so that I could rest a little bit more in the evening, whether it was intentionally just telling myself, find ease where you can today. And I so credit this with me, not just completely getting totally sick, but having just a little bit of a dip. So I encourage you, if you have had a morning practice and maybe it's waned, just gently return to it. Simple things like 4 deep breaths and checking in on your life force. If you've never played with a morning practice, this is a perfect time to start. And you can take mine, which comes directly from Christine, or anything else that you've heard in this episode or other episodes. Christine also has resources available on her website, christineoreilly.com, that you can check out too. And so that's one invitation for this week. I have a couple of more. The second one is to remember this act of putting our wise being glasses on so that we can really use these feminine wisdom perspectives and practices to pause and elevate out of the intensity, returning to our centers. And then finally, I love this one that Christine shared at the end, the EOMs and the EOEs, evidence of momentum and evidence of elevation. And my invitation to you, the game, is every day find and share one EOM or EOE. And better yet, share this podcast with a friend and then invite them to share the EOEs and the EOMs daily together with you. You can do just a simple text thread. It can be so, so powerful just to have that simple moment of sharing and witnessing. And together we can all elevate ourselves and elevate each other. And finally, you're always welcome to join us on the Feminine Wisdom Cafe. We'll put a link in the show notes. Christine and I are there. Lots of wonderful wise beings are there sharing and just journeying together as we move through these times. And then join us next week when Christine will be broadcasting live with a special episode for the Lammas and Lionsgate cross-quarter point of the year. This gate is one that we collectively walk through every year around August 1st, and it's very powerful, so definitely tune in. I'm looking forward to being with you again, sending you all off with much love.